agency is humming right along as the Jeff Russ' favorite term, the legal tampering period, is well underway. Guys can... What?
I hate you.
Yeah. It is tomorrow when they can start actually signing these contracts that are being agreed upon. But we have a ton of movement at some interesting positions, too. We've seen running backs going off the board left and right in some really big signings. Josh Jacobs to Green Bay. You had Saquon Barkley go to the Eagles yesterday. Today we get Derrick Henry going to the Baltimore Ravens. You got Joe Mixon just signed with the Houston Texans today. Traded to the Houston Texans because they were going to release him. And that was kind of a messed up move that both the Packers and the Bengals did. The Packers agreed to terms with Josh Jacobs, and then after kind of all the movement is going on and guys are sorting out their future destinations, they just release Aaron Jones and are like, deuces. He goes to Minnesota. He goes in division and goes double barrel. F you, I'm out. And
call that pulling a Saquon.
They did that to Joe Mixon as well. Joe Mixon, they go sign a running back, and then Joe Mixon, you're all of a sudden on the outs, go find somewhere else to play after everybody else gets their money. But we've seen a ton of big-name running backs moving. And whether it's, guys who the Dallas Cowboys, they get 1 year of Tony Pollard as a workhorse back, he gone. We're seeing big names at the running back position. The guard position has been getting a ton of money. And we're seeing a lot of guys, whether it's Eric Armstead, Patrick Queen just went from Baltimore to Pittsburgh today as a free agent. And then quarterbacks. How rarely do we see guys like Kirk Cousins and Russell Wilson shake up the market in the same year? Quarterbacks usually never hit the market, and we had two this season do it.
We talked about this, I want to say a couple months ago, about kind of forecasting what this offseason was going to look like. And the idea of, the frequency with which quarterbacks hit the market because of the impact it can have and how that shakes everything out. But the reasoning why that doesn't happen. The contract structures, which you're seeing the massive penalties the Broncos were willing to eat right now for Russell Wilson. I always wondered, would a team, is there a level you can get to where a team's like, yeah, it's just too much? And the answer is no.
Yeah, and I think that where this is all coming down to is that in the NFL, it is relatively quick to turn things around. So you take that short-term penalty of whether it's $85 million of Russell Wilson, or it is the Minnesota Vikings going, wait, we went through how many years of Kirk Cousins knowing how far he can take us, and we just kept doing it over and over again. We'll let somebody else go through that.
And we also don't have a replacement plan.
And
it's amazing.
Yeah, they do. Sam Darnold, baby.
It's amazing how there's a $179 million difference in the deals between Kirkers and Russ.
Yeah.
God, just think how much you have to suck as a human being to that, because as a football player, it's not that different.
No, it's not.
It's not.
But I think what teams are doing now is saying, all right, if we have a plan in place and we know it's not working now, we'll pull the ripcord. And we know that it can be a quicker turnaround because we can get, for Denver, we're going to have 2 years that it's going to be tough. But after those 2 years, our books are clean, and we can, if we have our faith in our draft process, you can turn things around in relatively short order, especially with the cap going up as much as it has been lately.
Which maybe the Broncos shouldn't have faith in their drafting process because they've sucked at it.
They haven't been great.
It's been really rough. And there's a difference. Yeah, they did get one. Everybody gets one.
Yeah.
That's how that works. Unless you're the Raiders and Mike Mayock.
Yeah, well, you can, but the thing is that you can turn it around quickly. You can also drive it in the side of the mountain and not be good at all. But I think what we're seeing in the NFL especially is the loyalty that they claim that they had before.
Oh, it's even
they're
less now.
Actually just living the life of, you want to see what no loyalty is? We'll show you what it is because we can turn things around in relatively short order.
I think there's also a difference between pulling the ripcord and getting the parachute and pulling the ripcord and getting an anvil. And that's what the Panthers have. You and I talked about this off air about the idea of the Panthers and whether or not that they can be back sooner. I don't think they can. I think it's going to take them 5 years to be relevant.
We'll get to that because that's a whole thing, right?
But that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a
are-
possibility to take the shortcut through hell, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely levels and rungs to hell, and the Panthers are at the bottom of it.
And I think what franchises are also saying is that if you want to get to the top, moves on the margins don't do it anymore. I mean, they don't. For teams like Kansas City, yeah, moves on the margins, they work.
But once you're there, it's fine.
San Francisco, moves on the margins, those work for you. But for 90% of the NFL, you can't move on the margins anymore, which is keeping your guys and overpaying for a guy to continue to stay there or holding on to a guy for a little bit longer when he's getting older. But what we do see now, and I think that this is the fascinating part of free agency, which makes some of these teams making head-scratching moves, and the other ones you're going, that is really smart. A Saquon Barkley going to Philly. I think that is a fantastic move because they're sitting there and they're going, all right, we need to load up, and we know we can do it now. This is a player in a position where it is getting devalued with every single year. We're going to pay him what he wants because we have the wiggle room to do it. We know that the draft, and that's a team that drafts really damn well.
Really good.
And their positioning that they are in this year's draft is right where they need to be. If they're at 22 in the first round, they'll be able to get one of those top 3 centers. They have a big hole to fill. If not, they're going to be in a great position to draft potentially a Fletcher Cox replacement there. They've got the framework to say, all right, we're going to make these moves with these
X,
guys
then
older
Y.
longer in the tooth. Derrick Henry to the Baltimore Ravens. I got questions about that because scheme fit, it's a little bit less of a slam dunk than
Not
Saquon
square peg
Barkley.
round hole, but it's not fitting either.
No, he's a tremendous back, and I think what it may be a signal of is Todd Monken is going to change what they do schematically. Because if you look at what Derrick Henry's best years as a running back have been, and his most consistent years, and really through the entirety of his career, but when he had Arthur Smith, they were about 70 to 75% zone scheme. And so you're getting to the outside, you don't have that defined hole. It is put your foot in the ground, find that crease and go. And he is north-south, downhill runner, and with as big, strong, and fast as he is, it makes him very dangerous. What you look at what Monken did in Baltimore this past year, it was a majority of gap scheme, which means you're a man on a man. It's not that fluidity. It's not, they do run a lot of counter, but at the same time, it's a different running style that you're going to have Derrick Henry asked to do. And it goes from like 70% zone for Derrick Henry to about 40% zone running
Which is
scheme.
A big difference.
And most of the zone runs that the Baltimore Ravens had last year were designed for Lamar Jackson. So it's like their running backs were running a ton of power, a ton of counter, and that is going to be either a wholesale change to what Derrick Henry does. What I think it's going to be, because Monken, when he was an offensive coordinator in Tampa before, they ran a lot more zone than they did this past year. I think that's what we're going to kind of go back to. But on the surface, it's a full-sale change from Derrick Henry, and it is a square peg in a round hole right now. Saquon Barkley, run scheme in Philly and New York, relatively the same. It'll be an easy transition for him right there. But we have all of these moves that have been, like, those good teams are getting great right now. And I look at it, and I'm sitting there, and Kirk Cousins is getting a ton of the love for the best move in free agency. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm sitting here and I'm looking with all of these names. Josh Jacobs to Green Bay, Saquon Barkley to Philly. I mean, these are teams that were already good, and they're emphasizing where they needed to improve the most.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there to work with, and I still think that there's. The biggest questions I think are going to be the additions that we hear. We just got to talk about how the margins don't matter. The margins that you look at the free agents that are left. My God, you get through the list and you're like, well, there's still a truckload of wide receivers out there. There's still Tyron Smith out there. There's still Trent Brown out there. Like you've got some of the best tackles in the game that are still out there. So you've got these, moves on the margin, so to speak, but you also have absolute dudes. You still got some of the best guards in football that are out there in the market. And then you go back and you look at the cornerback and safety market, and there's still 25, 30 impact guys at the back end of defenses that are out there and available. And then you've got teams like the Cowboys who the only thing they've done is sign their long snapper.
The only team in the NFL, the only one that did not make a move in the first day of free agency was the team whose owner said, we are all in this offseason.
Yeah.
Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. The only one without a transaction. They felt the pressure today, so they re-signed their long snapper. Way to go, guys. Way to go, guys. I think, low-key, one team that they took a huge hit is Miami.
Yeah, they those financial transactions that they had to make for roster balance, it's tough.
The one team, though, that it benefited from what Miami's going through, and they lose Kirk Cousins, but you get Andrew Van Ginkel from Miami. They went out, they got Jonathan Grenard from the Houston Texans, which that's more of a roll of the dice because he pops in the year that DeMeco Ryans shows up.
Which is interesting because you have Daniil Hunter right there who had 16 sacks for you last year.
Yeah.
Like that's weird, right? To have the guy in-house who fits, who's productive, and to go get the guy who was in another scheme.
Well, and then they went and they got Blake Cashman from Houston as well, who had a great year under DeMeco Ryans, and then you're like, okay. Their defense, though, they improved the three places that they had their big holes.
Sure.
Offensively, though, they replaced Kirk Cousins with Sam Darnold, which everybody's like, that's a massive drop-off. I don't know how much of a drop-off that's going to be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
I'm going to be quite honest. Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson.
We get to put it to the test.
And TJ Hawkinson.
We get to put it to the test.
And that is the fun part, is we get to see it.
We get to see, okay, here's a legitimate replacement-level quarterback in Sam Darnold, who's a probably likely career backup patch starter. If he puts up 4,200 yards and 28 touchdowns, everybody's going to look at Kirk and just squint at him like, you son of a...
But this all goes, like, what happens if Justin Jefferson takes a look around and is like, get me the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Because he has every right in the world to do that at this point. I mean, that is a massive roll of the dice. Right now, though, I'm going my favorite move so far, it's Saquon to the Eagles.
I like it just because of the pettiness.
I like that part of it, but I think he is going to be
he's also multiple, too.
Yeah, he's multiple. He can alleviate a lot of the stress off of Jalen Hurts. They need to figure out their offensive line, especially with Jason Kelce being gone, and that is a massive question mark. But I go back and I'm like, I look at their history, though. Remember, they signed DeMeco Ryans before. They re-signed LaShawn McCoy. They've struck out with running backs time and time again. They've gotten on the cheap. They're guys that they go and they get off the bargain bin, whether it's DeAndre Swift or guys like Darren Sproles, right? They've hit on those guys, but the high-profile signees at running back especially, they have not worked out for Philly. And I'm going to be fascinated to see the Saquon fit. I think that it works, though, with Saquon in Philadelphia. I also like Josh Jacobs in Green Bay. I think Jordan Love. Matt LaFleur went and got Jordan Love a little safety blanket there.
Yeah, no, and now I'm sitting here looking at the Raiders like, do you want a running back?
Yeah. No.
Because apparently the answer is no.
No, they don't.
Because
they don't.
There's been about 15 that have signed, and the Raiders weren't one of them.
I also agree with this text, Vancouver Ford text line. My favorite move is KC re-signing Chris Jones. Yeah, dude. Kansas City, retaining your own guys.
Especially
I'm talking
Super Bowl.
player movement.
Yeah.
Retaining your own guys. That has been the biggest key here because we've seen a lot of teams, whether it's, KC with Chris Jones or Jalen Johnson in Chicago. Like we've seen a lot of these guys just kind of stay home and Brett Veach and what he's doing in Kansas City is masterful with the salary cap and being able to find guys that are willing to stay. It's incredible.
And you saw what Josh Allen did yesterday, right?
No.
He restructured.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. So they're converting. They're going to get like 16 million.
You got to.
Yeah. So, but that's after talking about losing your own guys. That's after they released Poyer, Neal, Morse, Hines, Hardy, and Tre'Davious White.
Hot damn.
That is a lot of dudes to release. Very much like the Miami Dolphins. That AFC East had a nice little purge of talent.
Yes, he is. Yes, it is.